You're here because you're someone who likes to go beyond the surface, to really understand what makes things tick. Today, we're taking a deep dive into a topic that's incredibly important for a lasting marriage, setting the stage for a great sex life.
Our guide for this journey is the book Sex 101, Getting Your Sex Life Off to a Great Start by Clifford and Joyce Penner. They're internationally respected sexual therapists, educators, and authors. And this book, first published back in 2004, really reflects their extensive experience.
Yeah, decades of experience. So, our mission today is pretty simple. We want to pull out the essential wisdom from the Penner's book to help you, whether you're engaged or maybe in those early years of marriage, build a truly fulfilling sexual connection, one that grows.
Right, because, some people might think, well, this part of marriage, it should just sort of fall into place naturally.
Exactly. That it just happens.
And look, while that can happen for some, the Penners found that for most couples, actually, a little preparation can make a huge difference. It can really help prevent disappointment later on.
And it's not just about the wedding night, is it?
Not at all. It's about nurturing that satisfying, intimate bond for the long haul, a lifetime.
Okay, let's dive into the first big idea from the book then. Making sex sizzle. I like that phrase. The Penners use sizzle to describe that, passion and excitement we all hope for.
Think of it like a flame, maybe.
Yeah.
That initial spark is wonderful, absolutely. But keeping it alive, keeping it burning brightly, that takes a little effort. Some intentional stoking.
Right. It's not just a one-off thing.
No, it's something you actively nurture.
Which brings us to a really key point they make, that transition. Moving from the often intense passion you might have when dating
Right.
to the sort of everyday realities of a married sexual relationship. The Penners say this is a really crucial point.
It really is. It can either strengthen your bond significantly or, if you're not careful, it can become a source of, frustration.
So what's the secret then?
Their core message here is really about the power of intentionality, being deliberate.
Yeah.
Great sex in marriage, they argue, it doesn't just happen magically.
You have to actually plan for it in a way.
Exactly. You have to be deliberate about creating the time and space for it. And they offer some really practical, down-to-earth suggestions to keep that spark, that sizzle going.
Like what? Give us some examples.
Okay, so things like making a point to spend just 15 minutes each day connecting emotionally or maybe spiritually.
15 minutes, that's doable.
Yeah, and ending that connection time with a really good, passionate kiss for at least 30 seconds.
30 seconds, okay.
They also suggest planning a weekly date night, maybe setting aside a couple of hours specifically for physical intimacy.
And bigger chunks of time, too.
Yes, like a whole day together each month if you can manage it, and maybe even a weekend getaway every quarter. It's all designed to keep you connected on these different levels, you see.
It sounds like a lot of planning, but I guess the point is being intentional.
It is. And what's also interesting is their focus on tackling those unspoken expectations we all carry around.
Ah, the expectations trap.
Right. If you and your partner have different ideas about frequency or initiation or whatever it might be, just bringing those out into the open and talking them through can be incredibly helpful. It can even add to the excitement, actually, in discovering each other's views.
They also talk about letting go of any sense of obligation, right? Like, sex shouldn't feel like a chore.
Oh, absolutely. That feeling of demand is a huge passion killer. The Penners really advocate for freely giving to each other, and just as importantly, speaking up immediately if you do start to feel pressured.
Because the other person might not even realize they're doing it.
Precisely. Open communication about that is key.
Stepping back a bit, they also touch on how our pasts can affect intimacy.
Yes, that's a really crucial point. Things like maybe growing up in a difficult home environment or experiencing abuse or trauma, or even having destructive past relationships. These things can cast a long shadow.
And they don't just disappear when you get married.
No, they often resurface as you get closer. So the Penners strongly advise seeking help, maybe professional help, to heal from those old wounds. And they also stress dealing with any current addictions, because those can really block true intimacy and passion.
Okay, and the last point in the sizzle section was about keeping the pilot light on. I like that image.
Me too. It's about maintaining that sort of low-level connection throughout the day, isn't it?
Yeah, not letting the fire go out completely between those bigger moments.
Exactly. It's about keeping your partner in your thoughts in a loving way, maybe even a sensual way sometimes. Mentally preparing for your intimate times together, especially if you've planned them.
And creating the right conditions.
Yes. Making sure you're rested as much as possible, having privacy, having it a chance to talk and connect first if that's needed, And those simple things they mentioned, like trying to go to bed at the same time.
And that daily passionate kiss we talked about.
They really can keep that pilot light burning.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's move on to another really important area the book covers. Clarifying expectations. The Penners seem to think this is foundational.
It really is. They make it clear that a fulfilling sexual relationship in marriage often depends, at least partly, on how you start out.
And a lot of problems stem from mismatched expectations.
Exactly. It's fascinating they say many sexual issues couples face, sometimes right from the honeymoon, actually come down to these differing, often unspoken expectations, or a lack of good information, or just feeling awkward talking about sex.
So the book tries to help couples have those conversations early.
Precisely. They aim to guide couples through that process right from the beginning.
And they have practical tools for that.
Yes, they include a really neat exercise called What Turns You On. Sounds like a fantastic way to get talking.
How does it work?
Basically, you and your partner take turns finishing sentence prompts. Things related to your impressions, your feelings, your desires for each other sexually.
Oh, that sounds useful. And maybe a bit vulnerable.
It can be, but that's the point. And it's so valuable because, as the Penners point out, what excites you sexually isn't fixed. It changes over time.
Right, you evolve as a couple.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they even suggest maybe doing that what turns you on exercise once a year, kind of like a relationship check-in.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
They also mention understanding your sexual patterns.
Highlighting that becoming truly one sexually starts with desire, which we're all wired for, but it looks different for everyone. And then they get into a really important topic, body image.
Ah, yes. This affects so many people.
It really does. Feeling unhappy with how you look can seriously get in the way of sexual freedom and just enjoying yourself.
And they tackle those myths about size.
Directly. The idea that breast size or penis size determines pleasure or satisfaction, they debunk that completely.
Good. So what do they suggest for improving body image?
They offer 3 concrete steps. First, really examine how you see yourself. Does it match how others see you, especially your partner? And think about where those views came from, past experiences, negative self-talk.
And your partner's view can help.
Immensely. Your spouse's loving words and acceptance can be incredibly healing, they say.
Okay, step 1 is examine your view. What's step 2?
Step 2 is actively thinking about what, if anything, you might want to change about your body through diet, exercise, grooming, things you have control over.
And the third step?
Reevaluating your ideal. Be critical of media images, Look for more realistic, healthy role models. Maybe even talk to people you admire about how they approach their own well-being.
That's practical. The book then moves into exploring your expectations more broadly, right? Like what you imagine married sex will be like.
Yes, covering things like, when do you think you'll first have intercourse? How often do you expect to be intimate? Who do you imagine will usually initiate? How might your current physical intimacy change after the wedding? Lots to consider.
And another exercise for that.
Yes, called 10 expectations. You each list 10 expectations you have for the other, generally and sexually. Then you think about how you'd feel if they weren't met.
And the goal isn't to make demands.
No, not at all. It's to share them openly and then brainstorm creative ways to meet each other's needs without creating pressure. Negotiation, not demand.
The Penners also bring up your sexual past. That can be tricky territory.
Very. They acknowledge everyone brings a history, different family models, maybe secrets or hurts. They advise being really thoughtful about how and when you share that past.
Maybe even get some advice first.
They actually suggest possibly talking it through with a counselor beforehand, because it can really impact your partner's feelings. Caution is needed.
And they tackle that common question, why do I need to learn about sex? Shouldn't it just be natural?
Yeah, and their answer is really insightful. They point out that, well, societal norms and our own values mean we don't really get to experiment completely naturally beforehand.
Plus, what we see in the media is often distorted.
Hugely distorted. So learning accurate information becomes really important.
They also challenge those gender stereotypes, don't they? The always ready man, the passive woman.
Oh, strongly. They are very clear. Any sense of demand in sex is a passion killer. It has to be a choice, freely made by both.
But they do acknowledge some general differences.
They do mention typical patterns, but they really encourage couples to break free from rigid roles. Men learning sensitivity, women learning assertiveness.
Yep.
That can actually lead to, well, greater ecstasy for both.
Okay, let's shift gears. The book dives into knowing your body, right? The actual physical side of things.
Yes, it provides a really clear overview of the physical responses during sex. They start with the 4 phases identified by Masters and Johnson: excitement, plateau, orgasm, and resolution.
And these aren't just about intercourse.
No, that's a key point they make. Any kind of stimulation can trigger these phases. Intercourse is just one way, not the only way, and certainly not a guarantee of satisfaction on its own.
Right. So the excitement phase or arousal, what happens there?
They explain it's mainly due to something called vasocongestion, basically increased blood flow and fluid moving into the sexual organs, like blushing, but down there.
Okay, so for women,
The clitoris swells, the uterus starts to lift slightly, and vaginal lubrication happens quite quickly, often within 20 seconds.
but lubrication doesn't automatically mean she's emotionally ready.
Exactly. That's a crucial distinction the Penners make. Physical readiness is one thing, emotional readiness is another, and only she knows that. They also recommend lubricants water-based like KY are usually best, especially with latex condoms. Oil-based ones can damage latex.
And breast changes?
Yeah, nipples becoming erect, maybe a slight size increase. They reassure readers that men usually find this exciting.
And for men, during excitement,
The parallel response is penile erection. They note it's involuntary and can be easily disrupted by stress or negative thoughts. The scrotum also thickens and lifts, and some men might get nipple erection too.
okay, phase 2, plateau. This is the buildup.
Exactly. It's the phase that varies most in length. Tension and blood flow keep increasing, leading up towards orgasm.
What are the signs in men?
A slight increase in penis size and maybe a deepening of color. The head, the glands, gets larger, more changes in the scrotum, and maybe some pre-ejaculatory fluid. Internally, things are happening too. Testicles enlarge, the left one rises, prostate contracts, bladder sphincter closes.
Leading to that point of no return.
Right, what they call ejaculatory inevitability.
And for women in plateau,
A lot happens internally. Uterus lifts more, the inner part of the vagina kind of balloons out to create space, and the outer third becomes really engorged, the orgasmic platform. Some women feel that as a pleasant squeezing.
and the transition to orgasm, is that obvious?
Often quite subtle, actually. They describe things like involuntary foot flexing, heart rate and blood pressure going up, pelvic thrusting, muscle tension, maybe a skin flush, facial grimaces, gasping or moaning,
Hmm.
which is actually from faster breathing. They note that inhibiting these responses can make orgasm harder to reach, especially for women.
Then the orgasmic phase itself, short and intense.
Very. A reflex, just a few seconds long. You can't really make it happen through willpower, but you can inhibit it by tensing up, or you can enhance it by continuing stimulation and staying focused.
What's happening physically for women during orgasm?
Internally, rhythmic contractions of the uterus, like tiny labor contractions but pleasurable, and contractions of the PC muscles in the vagina happening really fast, about 0.8 seconds apart. The clitoris also pulls back under its hood and sometimes needs direct touch at this point.
And for men, 2 stages.
Yes.
Yeah.
First, internal contractions, seminal ducts, prostate, rectal sphincter, bladder, moving the ejaculate to the base of the penis. Then the second stage, ejaculation, the expulsion of the seminal fluid with sperm.
Are there big differences in orgasm between men and women?
Quite a few. Women's responses are generally more varied. They can potentially have multiple orgasms, really limited only by desire and comfort. Men usually have a refractory period afterward where they can't get aroused again right away.
And that period gets longer with age.
Yes, and also depending on how recently they last ejaculated. An important point they make is that a woman's orgasm can be interrupted, but a man's can't after that point of inevitability, which kind of counters the idea that men can always stop themselves.
Okay, finally the resolution phase. Coming back down.
Exactly. The body returns to its unstimulated state. Tension releases, blood flow decreases.
For men, the erection subsides.
Yes, though the timing varies. The glands might be sensitive for a bit, and that common feeling of relaxation, wanting to sleep.
Which can sometimes be frustrating for women.
It can be, yeah. For women, if orgasm didn't happen, they might still feel tense, maybe even cry involuntarily as a release.
Yeah.
If orgasm did happen, the return to normal is usually quicker because the contractions help dissipate the congestion.
And what happens after resolution is important too.
Very. Sleeping, talking, cuddling, getting up. Couples need to talk about what they each prefer during that time.
The book tackles some common questions here too, like about simultaneous orgasms.
Right. They say it's not necessary, not the ultimate goal. Trying too hard for it just creates pressure. Separate orgasms can be just as, or even more, enjoyable.
And how does a woman know if she's had one?
Usually by the feeling of release and relaxation afterward versus continued tension. They use analogies like a pelvic sneeze or opening a shaken soda can, though intensity varies a lot.
Can a man make his partner orgasm?
No, it's not his sole responsibility.
Mm.
He can learn what feels good, but she needs to know her body, communicate, and be active too. His focusing too much on her response can actually create demand.
What if a woman can't orgasm during intercourse?
That's very common, they say. Most women orgasm more easily with manual or clitoral stimulation. Different strokes for different folks, essentially, and it's all valid.
And if someone's never had an orgasm?
They recommend resources like the book Becoming Orgasmic and focus on just exploring pleasure without the pressure of trying to orgasm. Let arousal build.
What if the man is at the point of no return, but she hasn't climaxed?
He can keep stimulating her manually or orally after he ejaculates. Longer foreplay and learning ejaculatory control techniques can also help prevent that situation.
Okay, moving on to the honeymoon. The book talks about designing a successful one.
Yes, they frame it as this really special time to build memories, cherish each other, and look forward to the future together.
And the couple creates the vibe, right? Even if things go wrong.
Exactly. It's how you handle the unexpected stuff that matters. They also encourage you to define successful for yourselves. Is it nonstop sex, travel, peace and quiet? Fantasies differ.
So what are the key choices they highlight?
Well, under honeymoon choices, they stress it should be a gentle transition from being single. So privacy is huge, an unhurried pace, freedom from schedules.
What about those first 24 hours? Sounds intense.
They advise not overscheduling right after the wedding. The honeymoon starts when you leave the reception. They also suggest prioritizing the woman's needs a bit, as she often carries more wedding stress. Simple things like having transport figured out, maybe packing a food basket for a room picnic, practical stuff.
And connecting time is the main point.
Absolutely. Reflect on when you feel most connected, what pulls you apart. Balance togetherness with maybe some alone time and activities.
Like eating out, walks.
Share projects like thank you notes, reading together. But they warn against too much TV unless you both agree.
Rest is important too, obviously.
Vital. Start married life rested. Activities are fine if they're flexible, but avoid prepaid things that might feel like an obligation if you're just not feeling it.
And they say no surprises, generally.
Yeah, unless you both explicitly love surprises. Big, expensive, untested surprises are usually best avoided. Think about potential pitfalls too. Seasickness, sunburn, altitude sickness.
The honeymoon is also when you start establishing patterns.
It's definitely how you handle travel, money, routines. It starts here. A cabin might require setting more patterns than, say, a cruise ship.
Location, location, location. Privacy is key.
Crucial for sexual freedom. They actually advise against B&Bs because of thin walls and communal meals. Think about soundproofing.
And weather, geography,
Yeah.
personal preference.
Totally. Beach, mountains, city. And travel method, consider fears like flying. Preferences like leisurely drives versus trains where privacy might be less.
Who plans and pays?
Ideally, plan together. Share the financial load if possible. Make a realistic budget. Divide tasks based on strengths.
And be prepared for troubleshooting.
Yes, have contact info for doctors, maybe a counselor. They even offer their contact info in the book and suggest bringing Sex 101 along.
They also bust that myth about just staying in the room having sex the whole time.
Right. It's a time of adjustment, sexually and personally. The normal frequency is whatever you two decide feels right.
Okay, let's talk about preparing for your first time together after the wedding.
The Penners point out that just reading the book is already part of the preparation, opening up those inner worlds. And whether it's the very first time having intercourse or not, taking steps can make it a positive memory.
Starting with preparing your minds.
Yes, they call the mind the most influential sex organ. It controls thoughts, feelings, responses. They outline 5 key attitudes. First, sex is good and of God.
Based on the idea that sexuality and union are part of the original design.
Exactly. But they caution against rushing from premarital restrictions straight into total freedom. Suggest a gradual learning about each other's bodies is often better.
What's the second attitude?
Sexual responsiveness is inborn. It's an automatic thing, not just a mental decision, but you need a positive attitude to allow it. Honor that responsiveness in each other. Pursue it mutually. Potential is equal for men and women.
Third, sexual responsibility belongs to each person.
Right. Responsiveness is the feeling. Responsibility is the choice about that feeling. Fidelity, commitment, and importantly, debunking the idea that the man is solely responsible for her arousal. Each person owns their sexuality.
Fourth, mutual respect is the guide.
Essential. No activity should harm your connection with God or feel negative for either partner. Respect allows for that mutual vulnerability and abandonment to pleasure.
And believing these increases the chances of a good experience.
That's their view. Then they move to prepare your bodies.
Okay, practical steps.
They're women. A thorough, sensitive gyno exam. Understand your anatomy, readiness for intercourse, hymen flexibility, muscle tone. Ask about dilators if tightness is a concern, but be wary of surgery suggestions without second opinions. Discuss contraception well ahead of time.
STD testing too.
Yes, for both partners, as part of the marriage license process ideally. Check for yeast infections. Maybe get an antibiotic prescription for potential honeymoon cystitis.
And exercises.
Practicing PC muscle exercises, Kegels. And gently stretching the vaginal opening daily in the months before, using fingers or dilators. Plus grooming in a way that makes you both feel good.
And for the man.
A physical exam. Address any genital concerns. STD testing as well. A gift of trust, they call it. And practicing ejaculatory control through self-stimulation.
How does that work?
Focusing on sensations, learning the warning signs, using stop-start or squeeze techniques. But they strongly warn against using porn or feeding addictions during this. They also suggest ejaculating within 24 hours before the wedding night might help delay things the first time due to excitement and fatigue.
What about preparations to do together?
Definitely discuss and decide on contraception. Get supplies. Understand usage. Practice him with condoms, her with diaphragm capetic sodo, if using those. If using natural family planning, be aware cycles can be disrupted by wedding excitement, so consider backup or ovulation tests.
And lubricant.
Crucial. They recommend all newlyweds have some. Choose a safe one, water-based is usually best. Avoid oil petroleum with latex, and plan the wedding day for adequate rest.
They answer some common questions here too, like STD risk if neither has had intercourse.
Generally low risk if no prior genital contact. But they mention things like dormant HPV or oral herpes transferring. They still recommend testing for both partners to build trust.
And repeat AIDS testing.
Yes, because the virus can take months to show up. They suggest testing every 6 months until the wedding. Check current guidelines, though.
How about dealing with memories of past partners? That's tough.
Very sensitive. Acknowledge the past effects to your fiancé. Express your desire to be free from them now, but don't share graphic details that will haunt them. Focus on how it affects you, what you've done about it, and how you'll minimize impact. And really listen to their feelings without getting defensive.
Okay, the wedding night itself. Big moment.
Huge. A significant anniversary, a turning point. The potential of sex makes those memories powerful, positive, or negative. And it's a first for your marriage, regardless of past experiences.
So the focus should be on creating good feelings.
Absolutely. Warm, wonderful feelings, being sensitive to unique needs, wedding fatigue, the setting. Realistic expectations are key.
Like timing. Give yourselves enough time.
Yes. At least 12 hours between arriving and leaving, ideally 12, 18.
Yeah.
Expect a whole range of feelings, excitement, sadness, eagerness, hesitation, exhaustion.
Yeah.
It's all normal. Communicate.
And connect emotionally first.
Definitely. Before any sexual activity. And allow pleasure without goals. No pressure for arousal, orgasm, or even intercourse right away. Just enjoy bodies, kissing, touching. Sleep if you need to.
The most hesitant person sets the pace.
Crucial rule. Don't go further than both truly desire. Pushing will be remembered negatively. Success is just enjoying being together without demands beyond the comfort of the most hesitant one. Don't compare to some external standard.
Lots of emotions are normal then.
Totally normal. Fatigue, adjustment, newness. Recognize you have a honeymoon and a lifetime to get to know each other fully. Communication is the key.
What about the sexual experience itself? Consummation timing.
Not critical when it happens, but avoiding each other is a problem. If you're worried about lack of sex, call a timeout, talk about it.
And communicate during intimacy.
Yes, verbal and nonverbal. What feels good, what doesn't. Guide your partner's touch. Let arousal build in waves, maybe alternating genital and non-genital touch. Women often prefer gentler clitoral stimulation initially. Signal what you want. Men, vary your stimulation. If she wants orgasm before entry, not as demand, pursue that.
What if there's resistance during entry?
Could be physical, but most likely vaginal muscle tension from nerves. Be patient. Enjoy trying. Use different positions, maybe a mirror. Stop if frustrated. Just pleasure each other otherwise. Seek help if it persists.
Once entry happens.
You could stop, celebrate, try again later, or just lie close. Build rhythmic thrusting gradually. Rest sometimes. Kiss, touch breasts, clitoris. Focus on enjoying the moment, making it last. Resist rushing. If ejaculation happens quickly by mistake, it's okay. You have years to learn. Stay connected. Ask for more stimulation if needed. Offer it.
And afterward?
Talk. Cuddle. Affirm each other. Share what felt good. Have tissues handy. Cleanse gently.
What if it's the first time for both and she doesn't orgasm?
Very common. The authors share their own story. They didn't understand orgasm at first, but loved being together. Don't be disappointed. Focus on enjoying arousal. The reflex will likely happen eventually with activity and letting go. If frustration or crying happens, just hold each other. Connect.
They answer more questions here, too, like cleanliness.
Very important. Clean hands, bodies, mouths. Prevents irritation, infection, especially clean genitals, due to proximity to the rectum.
Pain or bleeding with the hymen.
Big range. Often none, or just momentary discomfort, especially with stretching beforehand, lubricant, and woman-paced entry. Severe pain is rare.
Reducing fear of pain for a virgin bride.
Fear can cause pain. Talk about it. Prepare diligently stretching, exam, PC control, visualization. Take charge of entry. Use lots of lube. Communicate fear. Stop if needed. Anticipation is often the worst part.
What if she lubricates, then dries up before entry?
Also common. Just use lubricant every time initially. Reapply as needed during longer play.
Does she have to orgasm every time?
No right or wrong. Enjoyment is often about closeness, not just orgasm. Varies hugely. Success isn't defined by orgasm or intercourse.
Experienced woman, inexperienced man.
Good for her to lead gently until both are comfortable.
Okay, to go straight to intercourse without exploring first.
Might feel a bit clinical, maybe exposing, not strictly necessary, but maybe less natural for some. The key is ensuring the conditions for a successful experience, mutual comfort, no pressure, are there, whatever the order.
All right, final section. Keeping the spark alive. This is about the long term.
Yes, transitioning from that initial honeymoon intensity to a deep, lasting intimacy. And it takes effort. They really counter that myth of natural, satisfying sex just happening.
So, developing positive sexual confidence is key.
Over time, yes. General self-confidence helps. Knowledge, practice, good experiences.
Yeah.
It leads to knowing your needs without being demanding or insecure. Accepting differences without taking them personally. Keeping sex about mutual pleasure.
And pleasure each other for the sake of pleasure.
Meaning, both have a right to pleasure, but only if it's free from demands self-imposed or from the partner. Lovemaking is a time to delight in each other. Sensations, without expectations beyond enjoyment. Pleasure can't be demanded, only pursued freely.
What if you feel yourself trying too hard?
Verbalize it. I feel like I'm trying to make something happen instead of just enjoying you. Refocus on good sensations. It works best when both can freely give and receive.
And keep kissing. Seems simple but important.
Hugely important. Most intimate form of pleasuring, they say. Talk about preferences, past negative experiences if needed. Take turns leading. Kissing is often an indicator of the sexual relationship's health, keeps the pilot light on.
Pursue sexual pleasure responsibly.
Equal rights, equal responsibilities. Feeling comfortable initiating touch, communicating needs, both giving and receiving. The receiver soaks it in, redirects if needed. The pleasurer enjoys their spouse's body for their own pleasure too, lovingly.
Anticipate your sexual times. Mentally prepare.
Yes, setting aside time helps, but even just picturing enjoying each other, positive expectation, it works.
Cultivate romance. The small things.
Exactly. Keep courting, wooing, seducing. Notice your spouse, touch them, give positive messages, write notes, create a romantic atmosphere, senses, lighting, music, privacy, lock the door. It can be fun and playful too, not just serious. Consciously decide to keep it alive.
And always keep the lines of communication open.
Vital. Discuss likes, dislikes, pace, intensity. Address things that kill the spark. Unresolved issues, unrealistic expectations, conflicts, routine sex, fatigue being the only trigger, sex being one-sided, lack of fulfillment.
What about when pain interrupts pleasure?
Sex should feel good. Pain needs serious attention. They discuss vaginismus, involuntary muscle contractions often linked to negative feelings, which can be overcome with retraining and dilation.
And physically based pain.
Increasingly reported, don't tolerate it.
Yeah.
Infections, irritations, tears, childbirth trauma. Talk to your husband, have a pain signal, pinpoint the pain, be assertive in seeking medical help. Change doctors if you're dismissed. Enjoy pain-free activities in the meantime.
Finally, they circle back to nurturing the emotional relationship dimension.
Revisiting those key ingredients. Desire, initiation, pleasuring, letting go, affirming.
Desire, it's innate, but experienced differently.
Yes. Don't expect your spouse to read your mind. Communicate needs clearly, openly, consistently. Avoid, if they loved me, they'd know.
Initiation, developing a love language.
Yeah. Verbal, physical, subtle cues. Women often respond better to positive messages about them, not just a need for release. Physical touch should feel like care, not demand.
Pleasuring requires communication, too.
Both verbal, outside of sex, and invitations during, and nonverbal, signals you teach each other. Acknowledge the hunger for touch. Enjoy touching and being touched. Read direct if needed. Often best if the woman sets the pace, teaches her husband about her body. He needs to be willing to learn. Love and erotic touch without pressure are vital.
Entry ideally initiated by the woman.
They suggest waiting for her signal, removes pressure since it's her body.
Enjoying the process, not just the goal.
Yes, rest during penetration, withdraw and enter, play. Abandon inhibitions, breathing, movement, noises. Moods very tender, passionate, fun, all okay.
Letting go happens with stimulation and lack of inhibition.
Right. Like a sneeze tension builds, you can stop it, but can't will it. Pursue that pelvic tingling for orgasm.
And affirmation afterward.
Crucial time for sharing. Closeness. If release didn't fully happen, still stay close. Hold each other, affirm love.
So learning to keep sex for pleasure is key for the long haul.
Absolutely vital. Sex changes when you commit for life. Turn that change into incredible freedom, they say. Establish good patterns early. Eliminate hindrances. Attend to the emotional side. Sets a positive tone for years. Hope for increasing enjoyment, not fading passion.
Wow, okay. So to wrap up, our deep dive into Sex 101 really shows that preparing for a great sex life in marriage isn't about some secret formula, is it?
Not at all. It's much more about being intentional, communicating openly, honestly, understanding your bodies, yours and your partner's, having realistic expectations, and always, always approaching intimacy with mutual respect and care.
This deep dive has really aimed to pull out those practical insights, those exercises from the Penner's book, to hopefully help you on what is a really important and, let's face it, personal journey. We definitely encourage you to take these ideas and talk about them openly, honestly, with your partner.
Yeah, that communication piece is just threaded through everything, isn't it? So now for a final thought for you to take away. Thinking about everything we've explored today, from, the importance of intention and communication to understanding physical responses, nurturing romance, what's maybe one small but meaningful action you can commit to taking this week, just this week, to intentionally nurture that sizzle and deepen the intimacy in your own relationship.